Another project I want to signal is the New York Public Library. And again, I think this has a lot of sympathy with projects going on here in the Basque Country. This is a map rectifier. And so they've basically created a tool that allows the library to change the perspective and the scale of ancient maps, of old maps, and overlay them on modern maps so that you can see the relationship between the layout of New York and other places around the world in relationship to where they were in the past and today. Another interesting project, again with augmented reality, is the States Museum in Amsterdam. And they have a project that's underway now, in fact. It's called DIY Augmented Reality. DIY is an English abbreviation for do-it-yourself augmented reality. So they've actually invited people to create augmented reality art to display on the museum plane in Amsterdam using LAR. And the final project I just wanted to touch on briefly is the Smithsonian Commons. Now, the real guru of this project is Michael Edson, who's the Director of Web and New Media at the Smithsonian Institution. And he's been leading for the past 2 years an initiative to, first of all, create a web strategy for the Smithsonian. And a key part of that, really the centerpiece of it, is something called the Smithsonian Commons, which he describes as a special part of our digital presence dedicated to the free and unrestricted sharing of Smithsonian resources and encouraging new kinds of learning and creation through interaction with Smithsonian research, collections, and communities. The Smithsonian Commons has now been prototyped, and again, you'll have the link so you can go. I would really love it if you could come and check out our prototypes, give us your feedback, give us your comments. All of the development of our web strategy and the Commons has been done completely in public through a wiki, through presentations like this, because we want to make sure that what we're building serves our audiences and not just the technology fetishists inside. And one of the things that we're trying to do is the Smithsonian has tended in the past to operate as a series of silos. So we have a natural history museum, we have an air and space museum, we have art museums, and the content of those collections tends to be only accessible in those silos, so through the American Art Museum website, through the Natural History website, etc. But increasingly, we've been looking in recent years for ways to bring those collections together, to allow searching across the collections, and to allow the collections information to really spark creative conversations across them. So this is one of the things that is kind of key to the Smithsonian Commons. And you'll see that there are 4 kind of stories of different people using the Commons, ways in which, for example, a teacher might use the Smithsonian Commons to prepare things for a class. You'll notice the Creative Commons copyright notice in the top left. But also very easy ways to cite and to give proper attribution to the source of information, which remains really important even in Creative Commons licensed content especially. So these are some links and ways to get involved. Please feel free to contact Mike or myself directly if you have any questions or comments. And I really just wanted to end with a few questions for you and thoughts. As you embark on this really wonderful and ambitious project to build a Basque Commons, if you will. First, I encourage you to start with what your audiences want and really finding out what that is through audience research, through talking to your audiences, and equally to think very hard about what you want from them. So when we put our content out in the world, what exactly do we want to hear back from the audience? Do we just want to hear, oh, that's really nice, I liked it, thank you? Or do we actually want them to contribute photos, to contribute geotags? And if we do, how do we bring those two things into alignment? What the audience wants from us with what we want from them, and how do we align those with our mission of our individual institutions and the initiative as a whole? And can we sustain that dialogue? So if we're soliciting a bunch of photographs, do we have the databases, the servers, the bandwidth to manage that? I think we probably need to start thinking about two different kinds of user-generated content, at least. One being perhaps more curated, very thoughtful content, like what we saw was contributed to the Powerhouse Museum's collections online, where somebody who's not an employee of the museum, but nonetheless has a lot of expertise, can contribute knowledge of such a value that the museum or the cultural institution will probably want to hang on to that and be able to do something with it in the longer term. And then there's another body of content that we might manage in a different way, perhaps through social media platforms, like comments on Facebook or likes. This content might have a slightly different use or impact today. That could change over time. But whatever kind of content, whatever kind of feedback we're soliciting from our audiences, I think we need to make sure that we can sustain that conversation so that we don't become victims of our success. I think in this respect, you're really well positioned because small is very powerful. And another interesting aspect of Chris Anderson's work on the long tail is looking at niches. Niche audiences, the passion that small groups generate around highly specialized activities, subjects, objects in collections or aspects of collections. That is a real resource for cultural institutions to tap into. If we can have 1,000 small communities who are really passionate about one aspect of your cultural heritage here, however specialized and small, that is an engine far more powerful than the mass or adoration of a Hollywood blockbuster. But we just need to know how to leverage it. And finally, be prepared for change. I think this has probably always been the case. We probably like to think that we're the first generation ever to go through radical change, but Europeans probably know even better than Americans that the only constant throughout human history has been change. And so being able to work with that and adapt to it is going to be critical to our mindset and to our ability to continue to be productive. And I think that means really when we're looking at technology-based initiatives, thinking not so much about the technology, that's what is definitely going to change. The one thing I can be certain of is that I will not be using the same phone in 2 years that I'm using today. But if we can focus on content, which is what this project is all about, that's what I think has the ability to last. If we build it intelligently, we don't have crystal balls, but there's an awful lot that we can do in terms of standards, markup languages, etc., to make content that lasts. And it's really, as I said, in the end, not about the technology. I think it's about a mindset. I think it's about a culture, about thinking differently. And one of the best things that I'm going to take away from my visit to the Basque Country was something I learned this morning, a new word for me, encontrismo. So we were visiting the cave paintings, and I learned about this style of painting that our prehistoric ancestors did, where they would recognize an animal shape in the rock, in the natural rock, and then just do a little bit of drawing to finish the picture, as it were. So the composite is partly natural and partly this human-made drawing. That, creating art like that requires a different way of looking. It's a different kind of artistic eye. I don't think we do this. I don't do this, although I'm a very visual person. I don't walk through the natural world looking for things that I recognize in naturally occurring shapes. I might do it with the clouds every now and then. But clearly, these ancient artists did this. This was a way of looking that they knew, that maybe some of us have lost. As a result of having this other way of looking, they were able to produce art like this.